How do you sort out the so-called jargon from real-world practices that work? Do the members of your organization find some business or technology advice utterly confusing? Welcome to Real Talk with Sam Holcman. In this program, we set the record straight, and in terms that business people and technology people can understand. Now, here is your host, Sam Holcman.
Welcome to this edition of Real Talk. I'm Sam Holcman, and this is where we look at the hidden forces shaping technology and the world around it, and sometimes not so hidden forces, and sometimes going back in history. This particular episode is sort of titled as follows: When Software Eats Itself. What? Why so many IT projects still fail, and unfortunately, why AI can actually exacerbate these issues. Of course, if we're not careful. So, today's story, today's episode, billions are still being wasted, companies bankrupted, governments embarrassed, all because of something we take for granted. What's that? Software. I don't know if we take it for granted or not, but it seems to be that way. This broadcast is based on an outstanding article titled Why Software Fails by Robert Charette. And I apologize to Robert if I've pronounced his name incorrectly. It is spelled Charette. And the article was an IEEE Spectrum publication, December 2025. So, our understanding not only of his article, but our decades of experience in the world of software. You've probably heard the old saying, software is eating the world. But what happens when software eats itself? That's the theme of this particular broadcast. Let us start out with a story. A well-known retailer had a warehouse that simply disappeared. Well, not physically, of course, disappeared, but digitally. A software glitch, isn't that an interesting term, glitch? How about calling it a mistake? More powerful, isn't it? Erased the existence from the company's distribution system of this particular warehouse. Shipments meant for the warehouse were diverted elsewhere, and products inside the warehouse sat untouched for, this is not fiction. You can look this up. Untouched for years. And the kicker? The employees kept getting paid because payroll ran on a different system. This isn't fiction. This isn't fabrication. This isn't hallucination. This is real stuff. When somebody finally discovered the glitch, the error, the mistake, management quietly liquidated the goods and told everyone to keep quiet. The cover-up is always worse than the crime. It sounds like an urban legend. Nope. Stories like this happen all the time with its variations. In fact, back in 2004, British grocer Sainsbury lost more than $500 million trying to automate its supply chain. The new systems jammed up warehouses, leaving store shelves empty. The company had to hire 3,000 clerks to stock store shelves by hand. And of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Every year, organizations around the world spend trillions on IT projects, and somewhere between 5 and 15% of those projects fail completely, abandoned, unfinished, or unusable. That's tens of billions of dollars gone. So why does software fail? The reasons read like a textbook on human nature. Unrealistic goals, vague requirements, weak communication, poor project management, overconfidence, and of course, politics. And more often than not, a culture that refuses to face reality. In Robert's article, who spent decades investigating software disasters, he compares software failures to airplane crashes. One problem alone rarely causes a catastrophe. It is when small mistakes line up, a rushed deadline, unclear design, blind optimism, that the system nosedives. How about remembering the Denver International Airport baggage system? It chewed up luggage and delayed the airport's opening for over a year. Or Foxmeyer Drug in the 1990s, a $5 billion distributor that went bankrupt after a failed resource planning system. And these aren't just tech glitches, they're enterprise-ending events. And yet we know how to avoid them. EACOE's enterprise architecture, BACOE's business architecture, rigorous requirements, realistic planning, mature project management, and a culture that rewards honesty over denial. These are proven practices, but many organizations still do not use them. Psychologists call this irrational escalation. Once we've poured more time and money into something, we cannot bear to admit it's failing. So we double down and sink deeper. Even governments are not immune. The UK government once created an entire department to prevent IT failures. Let me repeat this. The UK department once created an entire department to prevent IT failures. Then half the agency it oversaw ignored its guidance anyways. But there is a silver lining. Some firms, like Praxis in the UK, do it right. They start with trust and clarity. Customer and engineers define expectations together, challenge assumptions, and only write code once everyone knows exactly what success looks like. The opposite, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, of agile programming. The result, systems that work on time within budget. So maybe the lesson isn't about technology. It's about discipline, humility, and honesty. The willingness to stop chasing shiny technology and start building systems that actually serve human needs. Because as software weaves deeper into everything from airplanes to hospitals to power grids, failure will not just cost money, it may cost lives, and it already has. We already know how to do software right. We do know how to do this. The real question is, will we act on what we know before the next disaster hits? EACOE's enterprise architecture and BACOE's business architecture gives organizations a practical way to prevent exactly the kinds of failures that's described in these articles by making the complexity visible to human beings, aligning initiatives with strategy, and forcing clear, testable decisions before code is written. Where do these failures come from? Observations from the article show that large IT initiatives fail less because of technology and more because of vague goals, poor requirements, unmanaged complexity, weak governance, willful denial of reality, and the concept of just enough architecture or high-level architecture, whatever that means. Massive projects with unclear business purpose, shifting scope, and siloed communications accumulate rework costs until the costs and delays swamp any value. Organizations repeat the pattern because they treat software as a cost to be contained, not as a disciplined, architected-led investment. What does EACOE EA provides? The EACOE Enterprise Architecture methodology gives a structured, human-consumable way to align business strategy, capabilities, information, and technology before projects are funded or built. It focuses on explicit models of future and current states so decision makers can see impacts, dependencies, and priorities, enabled informed trade-offs instead of politically driven guesses. A key benefit is reducing complexity and redundancy in systems and processes. So large initiatives become modular, governable, and easier to evolve without catastrophic failures. How does EACOE change these outcomes? Built on a cyclical, iterative approach, not one and done with architecture, EACOE traces business goals through its processes, data, organizations, locations, and events. So every project is explicitly tied to strategy and measurable outcomes. This traceability eliminates contradictory projects, clarify sponsorship, and let IT focus on the high-impact changes in each iteration window. Because artifacts are designed to be human consumable, business stakeholders can actually use and maintain the architecture, improving communications and reducing requirement errors that drive most rework. What BACOE BA adds? So business architecture is part and parcel of this. And incidentally, it is not part of EA. That is a myth. EA is EA and BA is BA. They have different purposes. So the BACOE business architecture framework and methodology drill down into business sides of the equation. Concept of capabilities, value delivery, and stakeholders, and information relationships. The BACOE business architecture framework, what, how, where, who, when, and why, organizes business architecture into views that different stakeholders can understand and act on. Covering models and relationships across the enterprise. BACOE emphasizes measurable benefits in 3 categories: financial, service, and infrastructure. So architecture is framed in terms that executives care about: cost, revenue, agility, and quality of service. How can BACOE help avoid failures? By clarifying priorities, core competencies, and capabilities, BACOE helps organizations pick the right initiatives and sequence them, instead of launching, hate to say this, but I have to, politically driven, oversized programs with unclear value. Standardized templates, tools, and working examples accelerate the development of consistent business architectures, reducing ambiguity and communications breakdown between business and IT teams. This combination of clear business models and explicit traceability to IT initiatives directly attack the root cause of failure: poor requirements, weak alignment, and unmanaged complexity, rather than just swapping one delivery method for another. EACOE is the enterprise-level discipline that makes large, complex systems thinkable, traceable, and governable before money is committed. BACOE is the business side lens that ensures every IT initiative is rooted in real capabilities, value streams, and measurable outcomes. Together, they become the answer to the challenge that we are talking about. We already know how to do software well. EACOE and BAC are the concrete, teachable ways to act on what we know before the next billion-dollar failure hits. AI is not the answer to the systemic causes of software failure outlined in the article and in this broadcast. And in some ways, ladies and gentlemen, it can actually amplify the very risks that we warn about: misalignment, unmanaged complexity, and a refusal to confront reality. Why AI does not fix core issues. Most AI projects' failures today look eerily similar to traditional IT failures: unclear business value, weak alignment to workflows, and poor data governance. Studies now estimate that 80 to 90% of AI projects, yes, 80 to 90% of AI projects fail to reach production level or deliver measurable profit and loss impact, which is an even higher failure rate than conventional IT projects. In other words, dropping AI into a broken delivery system does not fix it. It gives you faster, more expensive failures. Maybe we should get rid of the term fail fast. AI also introduces new failure modes that were not previously had to be contended with. Hallucinations, fabrications, opaque models, and fast automated propagation of bad decisions. When organizations rely on AI output for design requirements, risk analysis, or code, confident but wrong answers can be embedded into subtle defects deep into critical systems, making rework even harder and more expensive. How AI can exacerbate these failures. Several dynamics make AI a force multiplier for these pathologies. Speed without understanding. Generative AI can generate requirements, architectures, and code faster than teams can validate them, which accelerates rework as governance and architecture disciplines are weak. The illusion of certainty. Hallucinated but fluent outputs can give executives and project managers false confidence, encouraging irrational escalation and even fundamentals, strategy, scope, and data qualities are wrong, even when these fundamentals are wrong. Governance gaps. AI governance is still immature. Let's be honest with ourselves. Many organizations lack clarity on accountability, controls, and compliance for AI-driven decisions, mirroring the poor risk management that is highlighted. Without a strong architectural and governance framework, AI becomes another immature technology that organizations chase for competitive advantage, repeating the same pattern that doomed earlier large IT initiatives, where EACOE and BACOE can change the AI story. EACOE enterprise architecture and BACOE business architecture give you the missing scaffolding around AI so it serves strategy instead of hype. EACOE ensures AI initiatives are explicitly traced from business drivers through goals, processes, data, organization, locations, and events, so teams deploy AI only when it's measurably advancing strategic goals. It helps contain complexity by designing AI as part of modular, governed architecture rather than isolated pilots bolted onto fragmented systems. BACOE clarifies stakeholder requirements, understandings, and capabilities, so AI use cases start from real business problems and measurable outcomes instead of AI for AI's sake. By mapping how decisions, information, and work actually flows, BACOE provides the context needed to decide where AI is appropriate, where it's dangerous, and what human oversight is required. Both our frameworks also reinforce the behaviors that are most of the time missing: clear requirements, realistic scoping, explicit risk management, and governance that can say no or stop when a project, AI or not, is headed toward failure. In that sense, AI is not the cure for software failure. EACOE and BACOE are the disciplines that prevent AI from becoming the next generation of spectacular, preventable debacles. This has been Sam Holcman with Real Talk. Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep your system safe, your code clean, and your optimism grounded in reality. Please reach out to us at www.eacoe.org and www.bacoe.org. We believe your time will be well spent with us. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Real Talk. Be sure to join your host, Sam Holcman, again for another edition of our program. We'll have more real topics of discussion then.